Shabbat shalom. It's good to be home. Well, I've been here for a week already. Should be careful when you leave the synagogue tonight. It's weird out there. Freaky. On the streets of Manhattan. I could even sense something weirdishly freaky on the way to work this afternoon in the park. There's just something very strange out there, a growing, palpable, paralyzing, terrifying fear. So when you leave the synagogue tonight, be careful. There's this dreary, dark feeling out there, ghostly threats lurking in the shadows. You're okay in here, but when you step out the door, be afraid. Be very, very afraid. It's a freakish, fiendish night. Every costumed kid reminds us of alien life forms that are out to get us. Gruesome creatures that prey on innocent flesh. They come to suck our blood. All those kids dressed up as Dracula. It's not just make-believe. Dracula lives in the shadows, willing to pounce on our every moment of weakness. He knows what we really fear, the sight of blood. Our blood, oozing out of us like a fountain, our blood that this hideous life form needs to survive. He kills the host to live another day. This strange day, October 31st, confronts us with our worst nightmares. Everywhere we look, there is horror. We are at extreme risk of unforeseen and unknown paranormal forces that will bring forth the apocalypse. I'm talking, of course, of Ebola. You knew that, right? This other thing that's going on, I think they call it Halloween or something like that. That's just make-believe. We think we're so brave, so fearless. We put on airs of fear, but give us the real thing, real fear. And we get freaked out beyond judgment and beyond reason. We're so bad at handling real fear that fake fear, like tonight, is almost a nervous impulse, a mask hiding our very real and very terrifying inner insecurities. In America, it's fright night every night. I don't know about you, but even the sight of that magnified Ebola virus, you know what I'm talking about? Filling the television screen every moment of every day. That tiny organism that no one can see with the naked eye, but when it is on the screen, it seems like some hidden alien zombie-like form. Even that is enough to freak me out. I come home after an exhausting day, turn on the television to see what happened, and Anderson Cooper's loop-de-loop virus fills the screen. It's got that little bow, you know, that little loop on its head at the end of its long body, as if to warn us, this noose is meant for you. All those news outlets, they know that this blown-up picture causes us immense fear. That's why they put it on and flash it into our brains every moment of every day. Is that fireworks out there? It's a freakish day. They want us to be afraid when they put this virus on the screen. It's good for ratings. There's no real news anymore. It's all entertainment. As screenwriters and directors and producers know, nothing sells better than horror and fear. We're all gonna die. This is the news today. Halloween, 365 days a year. ISIS is gonna get us. Al-Qaeda's gonna get us. Climate change will kill us. The Mexicans are streaming across the border. Ebola's going to get us. And now what an opportunity for CNN to get back into the ratings business. Ebola. Ebola. Be afraid. Be very, very afraid. We are doomed. We are all doomed. Even the name is creepy. Ebola. Something that Stephen King might have thought about. Forget this fake fear on Halloween. Look at the streets, look at our country, look at the world, and take note of what happens to people when they experience real fear. They lose judgment. They lose a sense of all proportion and reason. I spoke with someone yesterday who told me that the Westchester School of his 7-year-old daughter called him at work yesterday trying to find him every 5 minutes until he finally answered because he thought that some accident might have occurred at school, and it was the school administrator suggesting that his daughter be quarantined because the girl had a fever of 101 degrees. Whenever I notice mass hysteria, I always think of President Roosevelt. Remember his first inaugural address? FDR said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Honestly, I never fully understood what that meant. It sounds good. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. But what does that really mean? And what I think it means is not really true. There were good reasons to be fearful back then, at the beginning of the Great Depression. I think FDR might have gotten that phrase about fear itself from Michel Montaigne, who 3 centuries earlier wrote in one of his great essays, "The thing I fear most is fear." In other words, sometimes the fear of something is even worse than the thing. It's what we are experiencing with Ebola. You're not going to get Ebola. One person in America now has Ebola. He happens to live in New York City. You're more likely to die tonight of fright from someone who's trying to scare you on 68th Street when you walk out the synagogue. The only people who have contracted Ebola are medical caregivers who purposely put themselves in contact with Ebola patients at their most contagious moments. Even none of the family members of these patients have contracted Ebola. Doctors tell us that 36,000 Americans are going to die this year of the common flu. 100 a day. Every 17 minutes, someone dies as a result of firearms. 87 people will be killed today in America by a gun. You're far more likely to die by a taxi plowing into you on Columbus Avenue than from Ebola. What is happening is that local politicians, especially those up for re-election next week, are responding to the fears of the population. And I can understand them. They're politicians who have responsibilities to the public, and the risk-benefit calculation is to compel quarantine for those at higher risk. 80% of Americans agree. Part of the problem is that the science has not been communicated effectively. We see medical caregivers donning space-age protection suits, and they still get Ebola treating patients. The medical guidelines seem to change every week. It gives people the unsettled feeling that either the medical establishment is not leveling with us, or the scientists themselves are not certain about the science. At the very least, it demonstrates that the leaders of America's medical establishment might understand the human body well enough, but do not understand the body politic well enough. And the one thing that politicians excel at is understanding the public. That's the disconnect. Science is science. It's either right or wrong. If it's right, none of us is going to get Ebola from an asymptomatic patient. Since most of us are not scientists, we must take it on trust that scientists are leveling with us when they tell us that they understand how Ebola is transmitted. And that then should determine policy. We cannot simply lock someone in a portable tent if there is no medical reason to do so. The principle of freedom, individual protection from the state, is too important to us. But even assuming that the science is completely right, there's still the human soul. Science is cold, stark, disengaged. It does not take into account inner feelings and passions and fears. In our increasingly post-religious age that downplays belief, faith, and divinity, a void is opened up that must be filled. The human soul has its needs, and this void is often filled today by the body. Today, physical vigor often replaces religious vigor. We speak of physical harmony, balance, energy, organic, exercise. These have assumed an almost religious, spiritual connotation for us. And so an insidious virus that can literally suck our bodily fluids out of us is especially terrifying for modern people. It has a sort of unwholesome, stigmatic connotation. Not in passing that these tiny killers with their loop-de-loop noose-like top give the lie to the postmodern idea that what we do not see does not exist. Fearful people need reassurance. That was the genius of FDR. His first words to the American public as president were not about fiscal theory or economic science. Rather, they were words of reassurance. Part of reassurance is to calmly explain the facts, but reassurance goes beyond the facts. The great leaders, political, religious, communal, they understand the human soul. They tailor their words and their deeds to human needs. We shall overcome, they preach. Be strong and of good courage. There's a beautiful verse in this week's Haftarah portion from the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah was a genius, not of science, but of the soul. He understood his people's needs at their most basic level. It was a time of unprecedented fear for the Jews. They were in exile. They were scattered, despondent, and fearful, and at the mercy of the empire of Babylon. They were weary and frightened and harbored little hope for the future. Isaiah reassured them with these immortal words. You are weary, you are spent, you stumble, and you fall. But ish et re'ehu yazoru ule'achiv yomar chazak. May each person help the other, and may each say to his fellow, be strong. Take courage. Amen.